welcome to this edition of Dustin's Kaleidoscope. I'm Dustin, and today my guest is Ingrid Steffensen, who is the author of Fast Girl. A mom and a wife, a suburban mom, and please explain and tell us about your journey, even getting to the point of racing.
Sure. Well, I had a kind of, normal story. I grew up in a small town. I married my high school sweetheart, and we moved to the suburbs. I wasn't interested in living in the big city, but that's where he got his job. Mm-hmm. I looked for a job, and we found ourselves in New Jersey. I have a PhD in art history, and I wanted to be a college professor. Okay. And so I found a job in New Jersey, and I've gone to a couple of different institutions, and we were married, we had the baby, we bought the house, and so it's kind of the, the American dream, the 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, and two-career couple, and everything seemed to be, just fine and normal, and that was my life. And I thought, that's a really great life. I was a really happy person. I was with someone I loved, I had a great kid, and I thought that was pretty much the end of the story.
But there's more.
But wait, there's more. What happened was that my husband, as he got a little more successful, was able to indulge his love of cars, and he bought himself 11 years ago a high-powered BMW, and he took a training course at the manufacturing facility in South Carolina, and he was hooked. And he started going to track events, racetrack, driver's education it's called. And he started going there, and at the time my daughter was 3 years old, and I had a full-time job and a little kid and a house, and he went off, and I was kind of not very happy about it, I have to admit. I didn't understand it. I wasn't interested in cars or racing or anything, and for 7 years I kind of silently gnashed my teeth and let him go, and we kind of bartered for how many times he could go, and I was kind of not very happy about it. And then 7 years later, you fast forward, my kid is 10 years old, and all of a sudden it's sort of not that big a deal to stash her with a grandma over the weekend, and he had been repeatedly inviting me to go.
And you hadn't, in 7 years, you had never gone?
Nope. I never even showed up and watched. I thought, what am I going to do there with a little girl? Okay. And it sounds boring. and so I didn't go. And at this point, I finally decided, okay, I'll come along. Let's see what's going on that gets him so excited. And I could either come and watch, or I could come and drive. And I thought, well, it'd be really dull to just watch. And I had a Mini that I just loved, a Mini Cooper. And that was the extent of my love of cars, was I had a little car and I liked to drive it. Okay. And I took my Mini Cooper, I borrowed a helmet, and off I went to Watkins Glen, which is in upstate New York, to a BMW Club high-performance driver's education event. And there I was, and I was 41 years old, and I first set foot or drove out, behind the wheel onto the racetrack.
Wow, then that was it? I mean, was it like, I got to do this from now on, or were you still like, oh, it's nice, but no, I don't have to do it again?
Not at all. The first time I went, I was petrified.
Oh, really?
Out of my mind. The thing is that as someone growing up, my interest, was art history, and I was a reader, and I was a music nerd, and these were my activities. I wasn't a thrill seeker. I wasn't the one who was out bungee jumping. I saw my old babysitter last weekend, and she said, "You were the kid who wouldn't, climb a tree because it was too high and too scary." And I said, "Yeah, that's me." And so I get there, and I'm terrified. I'm shaking like a leaf, and I went out there, and I was terrible.
Oh, really?
Well, at least it seemed like that to me. I had an instructor sitting with me, and the poor guy, he saw I was so scared, he asked me, had I been coerced into this? I said, no, I wasn't. He said, are you sure you want to do this? I said, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I did it. And 2 days later, I'm done. It was a 2-day event.
Okay.
And I finished up and I climbed out of the car, my knees still shaking. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have to do this again. I'm done. And I got out of the car and then we drove home. And as the miles stretched out between the racetrack in upstate New York and my home in suburban New Jersey, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had just done.
Really?
And the next day I said to my husband, I must try this again. And he
Wow.
said, okay.
Wow. That's awesome. So it took you the drive from upstate New York to New Jersey, but after that you were excited and you wanted to continue doing it.
It was a little bit of a, love-hate kind of thing in that I was still really scared. And to this day, I've now been doing this for 4 years.
Okay.
Because the book took a while to come out.
Uh-huh.
And to this day, I go and I still get really nervous.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
But is this a type of nervous where it's good, like sort of to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So you're
good
not
nervous,
petrified.
but it's still really nervous.
Okay.
And I can tell you, every one of the guys there feels the same way.
Really?
Oh yes, they
Okay.
will all, if you press them, admit to butterflies before the event because it's just so high intensity that it still makes me nervous, even though now I consider myself pretty competent and I've become an instructor.
Okay. Wow. And how long did that take for you to become an instructor?
It took 3+ years,
Okay.
and then I was invited to participate in the instructor training
Oh,
program.
so you have to be invited.
You do, yes.
Okay. Well, one thing that I noticed about your book is that your life up until the point where you actually, stepped out onto the track was very pragmatic. You decided on what type of career you wanted and everything like that. But one thing that I noticed that you mentioned in your book is that going onto that track, it increased your confidence and it increased your level of tolerance of like learning new things. Like how can you explain a little, how does that manifest itself in other parts of your life?
Absolutely. Really, this book isn't, okay, yes, it's about cars, but it's not really about the cars, it's about the journey.
Okay.
It's about what happens when you step outside your comfort zone, and I'm talking in this case way outside my comfort zone. This was so uncharacteristic for me in every respect, and it was a revelation to realize that at age 40, my life wasn't done,
Yes.
and I needn't be held back by preconceived notions that I'd had of myself going back to my 20s, maybe even earlier. I had this picture of myself as a college professor, and I embarked on that career, and I went step by step to get what I thought I wanted. And I love teaching. I loved art and architecture, and I'm not sorry that I did any of that. But there were certain barriers to my career. It has to do with the conditions in the academic world as that market changes just like all the others, and there's a certain amount of outsourcing to adjuncts, and I bounced around a bit from job to job, adjuncting, and I did this at some great places, and I enjoyed it a lot. But I never got the tenure track position and the tenure track position that I wanted, that I had envisioned for myself. And I kind of let myself get bogged down in that.
In wanting that position?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes. In trying to adhere to an idea of myself that I had had when I was in my 20s and my 30s. And I was unhappy that I hadn't achieved what I'd wanted to achieve, but I didn't see any other way to be.
Okay.
And then I got to the racetrack and I did something so far outside myself, so far outside anything I knew about myself, that I realized that I'm much more capable than I thought I was, capable of change, capable of taking charge of something, of learning something new. And although I still love art and architecture, I've realized I can do something else. And now, if you have face down a high-speed turn at 120 miles an hour, you've come to that brake zone, and you go around that turn and you rocket back out the other end at 90 miles an hour. There's nothing that scares me anymore.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So as a consequence, we have just a few more moments, but have there been other things that you have decided, you know what? I read in the book where you were willing to eat escargot.
Yes.
But have there been other, major things that you in the past would never have thought of doing, but now you feel comfortable at least trying?
Well, actually, downhill skiing is an example. I had never been somebody who was interested in, speed and daring things, and so I had tried cross-country skiing, and I thought that was pretty, that was sort of my speed because I was in control,
right.
and I looked at downhill skiing, and I thought, no, that looks too fast and too scary, but at age 41, I picked it up, and I thought, and I really like it.
Wow.
But much more than that is the book itself.
Yes.
Is the writing of this book. Not only did the racetrack give me the raw material to write a book, but it gave me the courage to write something that's very personal and to try something that's utterly different from anything I've tried to write before.
Okay. Well, Ingrid, we're going to take a break now, and we're going to go outside, and we're going to visit with you in the car, but we'll come back afterward. So we'll be right back in a few moments, so stay tuned.
Local government, local educational institutions, and local community members all use cable access TV to communicate their message. They depend upon it as an affordable means of outreach. Public, educational, and government access television empowers local government agencies, individuals, and groups to use the media to speak directly to their constituents in a more direct and cost-effective way. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Why you chose this particular car?
Sure. I'll put the book
Okay,
away.
okay.
Well, what happened was I started with my Mini, and I had so much fun in the Mini. The Mini is a great track car, and in fact, I still have a Mini. But what happened was, you start progressing a little bit, and you want to go faster, and I started asking my husband, well, can we stiffen the suspension? Can we put on bigger brakes? What about a harness?
How did you even know about? Did you know about cars before this?
I knew nothing about cars.
How did you learn?
Absolutely nothing. Well, you go to the track and you learn this stuff, and you start, what can I do to make it faster? Do I put a roll cage in it? Should I put in a harness? And my husband said, well, this is your commuting car, and all of those things will make that car worse on the streets. And so
meaning the Mini Cooper.
The Mini Cooper, right, would be less comfortable and less practical on the roads. Okay. And so in what was a tremendously generous gesture on his behalf, he said, I think you need your own track car. He had his own already. Okay. And he said, well, I think you need your own. And I said, why, yes I do. And we started looking. And I had a friend who asked me, well, what role does being an art historian play in your racetrack experiences? And the answer is really none at all, except that I was attracted by the pretty car.
Oh, that's too funny. Just pure color. Okay.
Yeah, well, it was just so gorgeous and so yellow. But it was also, I got behind the wheel, I test drove it. It was a used one with not a lot of miles on it, and we hit the roads in it, and within the first screaming quarter of a mile, I said, I want this car so bad.
Wow.
I was in love.
So where does one, I mean, how do you even test drive it? Because you can't, I mean, really hit it, you can't hit the speed you would normally hit at the racetrack. So how do you even evaluate a car like this?
Yeah,
Test
well,
drive.
I probably shouldn't say because I don't know how many men in blue might be watching this.
Got it. Okay. So you were able to somehow manage to find out whether or not it was appropriate.
I rounded up a little bit on the back roads near Princeton, which is where there was a dealer, and I looked over my shoulder, and then I took it for a little spin, I might have gone over the speed limit just a little bit.
Okay.
By a few miles.
Coincidentally, I would like to know how fast does this car go, and not only how fast does it go, but how fast have you driven it?
How fast have I driven? That's a question I'm always asked. How fast do you go?
Yeah.
And the short answer is that on the back straight at Watkins Glen Racetrack in upstate New York, I've come just a hair short of 140 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is pretty darn fast.
That is fast. I would say most people watching would probably say that's very fast.
That's very fast. Now, in comparison to, say, what Danica Patrick does in, an Indy car, which does, 240 or so, it's not that fast, but compared to, say, the Garden State Parkway, it's pretty darn fast.
I would agree. So tell me a little bit about the car. It's a beautiful color, of course, but the horsepower, the more technical things that you probably looked at as a buyer.
Right.
What were you interested in?
Right. Well, why this is a perfect track car and terrible at everything else is that it's very, very tiny. The Lotus philosophy is kind of less is more. And so this car weighs just a hair under 1 ton.
Wow.
Which is really, really light.
It is.
And your average SUV is about double that, and your standard sedan is, usually over 3,000 pounds.
Okay.
And it's super lightweight. It has an aluminum chassis, a tub that you basically sit in.
Okay.
It has a fiberglass body, and I have a theory. I wrote it in my book. This is just me. That Lotus stands for leave off the unnecessary stuff.
I'll have to remember that. That's good. So that means it's bare bones.
It is total bare bones. There's no motor controlling the mirrors here. You just move them by hand.
Really?
There's no machine to raise and lower the window. It's an old-fashioned crank.
Okay.
There's one windshield wiper instead of 2.
Okay.
There's no insulation. It's really, really bare bones. It's the opposite of everybody wants to get everything in their cars these days, and this has nothing. It is stripped out. The only luxury I have is an air conditioner, which I'm keeping because I go to racetracks in West Virginia in July. It's very hot.
So they make the car specifically for racing. This is not, obviously it's not a commuter car, but it's not even is it even considered a road car in the sense that you would, ride in it regularly or just occasionally?
It's not a good choice for a primary vehicle.
Okay.
It's fully road legal.
Okay.
I can drive it on any road, so I can take it anywhere I want.
Mm-hmm.
But it's small, it's hard, it's loud, it's inconvenient to get in and out of. So it's really an enthusiast's car.
Okay.
And mine spends most of the time in a garage, except when I'm going to the track.
Oh, okay. You mentioned that this is a very short or small car. What is there for your? This is a Lotus Elise, correct?
Yes, it is.
So, is there a particular height limit for this car, or can I be 7 feet and have a car like this, or for this car?
It is better for smaller people. We've found that the sort of comfortable limit is just maybe a hair over 6 feet tall. Now I'm 5'6", so it's easy for me to get in and out, and so I find it really very comfortable. But the reason it's small, it has a short wheelbase, and that makes it extremely maneuverable. So very, very nimble. You can see it's very, very low to the ground.
I did notice that,
Yeah, which means I have to be very careful going over curbing because it's so low in front.
Okay.
And I've had it lowered and tightened and stiffened.
And that all helps race better?
All of this makes
Really?
it great at the track and not so great on the roads. But when you're going 140 miles an hour, 140 miles an hour is fast. But what feels even faster is when you get to the end and you need to make a 90-degree turn. That's the exciting part.
Okay.
So when you're bringing it down from 140, you want to bring it down to, say, 70 in the space of a couple hundred feet, and then bring it around the turn. That's the exciting part, and the Lotus does that better than just about anything else
Really?
out there that's street legal. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
it's
wonderful.
really fun.
Well, I also want, you said that there's a trunk. Can I see the trunk?
You can
because
see
I can't
the trunk.
imagine that there's really I guess it would just hold your helmet and that would be it pretty much.
I have a girlfriend who says this is a Bond girl's trunk because all you can fit in it is a bikini and a gun.
That is pretty much, I would agree with your friend. Yes, it is.
There's the engine.
Oh, okay, so what's in the front then? This is the engine.
Not much. Your feet.
Oh, really?
And the radiator.
Okay.
Is in front, and in back is the engine, which sits right behind your head and makes it impossible to carry on any kind of normal conversation in the car. And then this is the amount of space you get for your stuff.
And it looks like you have to share it with the windshield wiper fluid.
Yes, and
so-
the battery.
Oh,
Yeah.
and the battery. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow, this is great. This is really nice. So do you actually drive? I mean, I'm sure you're not driving your car to Virginia or.
Oh, yes, I am.
You do.
I do.
You don't have it to. Okay. So,
Yeah.
So is that uncomfortable? Because you said it's.
Yes,
sort
it
of-
is. Yes, it is. I'll make no bones about it. It's actually kind of unpleasant, but it's worth it when I get there.
Okay.
So I put up with it, and sometimes I even wear earplugs because it's
noisy?
that noisy.
You are kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. I think a little later I'll have you start it up so we can hear just
Sure.
how loud it is. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the track. Maybe we'll move over here a little
Sure.
bit. I wanted to talk a little bit about how did you? So you said your husband was already racing or doing going on the tracks, but first of all, are there many women who do this?
No, of course there are not very many women. It's really, that's where my story comes from, and it's where a lot of the humor in the book comes from. It's a very funny book, or that's what I'm aiming for. It was very funny for me coming from being an art historian, where I'm used to being surrounded by culture and art and music and whatnot, to be thrust into a world that's so male dominated.
Really? Okay.
And to be a part of all that. So yeah, I'm one of the only women. If you go to a typical track weekend, there might be 150 participants. That's a kind of round number, and there might be 5 women.
Okay.
So no, there aren't very many women. And the funny thing about that is that it may be the only sport in which it doesn't matter at all.
Oh, that's
Because
wonderful.
as
You're in the
soon
front.
as you're
Yeah.
behind the wheel, any physical differences are totally void, right? It's all about the supercomputer behind the wheel.
Okay.
And a woman's reflexes and a woman's brain and judgment are, every bit as good as any man's.
So Ingrid, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the safety of the car, because I know that's a big deal. That's a very big issue when you're actually on the track.
Yes.
So, and I noticed behind you have some of your equipment, the helmet, and could you walk us through that?
Sure. The club events that are organized by clubs like the BMW Club, the Porsche Club, the Audi Club, the Corvette Club, and so forth, are very big on safety.
Okay.
Because everyone is there to have a good time, and everybody's paying for their own cars. So a helmet is an absolute requirement. There's no driving without a helmet. So
Okay.
The helmet has to be a fully enclosed helmet like this, and this is just for the protection of the head. And when you drive, you're driving with an instructor in the car. And,
okay.
and so there is also a communicator that goes between the instructor who's sitting in the passenger seat and the student who's the driver, and that connects the two helmets so that you can talk to each other, and your instructor can tell you what to do.
So every time you're at the racetrack, you're with an instructor, or are you alone sometimes?
When you're a beginner, you're always with an instructor.
Okay.
And what happens is that as you progress through the ranks, at the track you're divided into what are called run groups. Novice for beginners, intermediate, advanced, and then instructors.
Okay.
And so the beginner students are always with an instructor.
Okay.
The intermediate students usually start out with an instructor, and then if they've been deemed safe enough, they may get what's called signed off. And then advanced drivers often have no instruction because they've gotten to that point.
Okay.
Since I wrote the book, I myself have become an instructor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so now I teach others how to do this.
Oh, that's great.
And what happens, of course, is you get faster and faster, and you get hooked, and you get faster equipment, and then you start needing more safety equipment or wanting more safety equipment. So, for example, my car I had installed beyond the normal 3-point seat belt, which is standard. I had a 6-point harness installed, which is one that has shoulder belts that go over your shoulders, and a submarining belt, which one goes between your legs and then across your lap.
Okay.
6 points.
Okay.
And this keeps you fastened into the seat, which gives you more control. It feels good. You're not fighting the car when you're moving from side to side. And then it allows you to do the next thing, which is to have a head and neck restraint system. That's what this is.
Okay.
And it's not a requirement. It's what happens if you get more advanced. Then many will invest in this, which is something that goes on your shoulders like this. Your shoulder belts go over this portion, and
So
these
it's like grippy material.
it's very grippy, so that it really holds you in. And then this tether attaches to the side of your helmet and is protection against a head-on collision, so that your head doesn't go too far forward.
Okay.
And I've never needed it,
That's good.
and
it's
I've
there
never
just
seen
in
anybody who has.
Okay.
But it's good to have. And then gloves are not a requirement. I bought them one time when I was really cold, and now I use them all the time. They give you better grip, especially if you're sweaty. They give you good grip, but they're not a requirement. And then you need thin-soled, flexible shoes. And for these track events, you don't need a suit. You just need cotton clothing, natural fibers. If you start doing actual club racing, then you have to buy the fire retardant suit. But really, anybody can come with a car and a helmet, and that's all you really need to start.
Hi and welcome back. Ingrid, thanks again for being here. Thanks so much for showing us your lovely car and explaining a little bit more about it. Again, your book is called Fast Girl. And where can we find the book?
You can find it in local bookstores and nationally, and it's also available for order on websites like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and it's also available as an ebook on your Kindle device.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for allowing us to see your car firsthand.
My pleasure, Dustin. Thank you for having me.